What would you do if, in a single day, you lost your family, your wealth, and even your health? Most of us would break. But there was one man who endured all of this and never turned away from God. This is the untold story of Job, faith tested beyond limits. Most people would lose hope. Many would curse life itself. But there was one man who endured all this suffering, and more, and still held on to his faith. His name was Job. This is his untold story, a story of faith tested beyond limits. The prosperity of Job. Long before the days of Israel's kings and prophets, in a land called Uz, lived a man known for his righteousness. His name was Job. He was not just wealthy. He was considered the greatest man of the East. He owned herds of camels, oxen, donkeys, flocks of sheep, and countless servants. His estate was vast, his influence undeniable, and his household vibrant with life. Job had 10 children, 7 sons, and 3 daughters. They would gather in their homes for feasts, celebrating with joy and abundance. But Job, being a man of deep faith, would rise early in the morning after each feast to offer sacrifices to God. He feared that perhaps his children had sinned in their hearts. Job's devotion was not shallow. It was rooted in reverence, humility, and an unshakable trust in God. To the people around him, Job was living proof that righteousness leads to blessing. His name carried weight. His counsel was valued. His life seemed perfect. But what no one saw was that a greater test was approaching. A test that would tear away every comfort he had ever known. The heavenly challenge. Beyond the world Job could see, a drama was unfolding in the heavenly realms. In the court of heaven, angels presented themselves before God. Among them was an accuser known as Satan. His mission was not to honor, but to challenge. He cast doubt on humanity's faithfulness. God spoke of Job with pride. "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. Blameless, upright, fearing God and shunning evil." But Satan sneered, "Does Job fear God for nothing? You have blessed him, surrounded him with protection, filled his life with abundance. Take it all away, and he will curse you to your face." Permission was granted. A line was drawn. Job's faith would be tested. Everything he had could be taken, but his life must be spared. Disaster strikes. In a single day, Job's world collapsed. A messenger came running. The oxen were plowing and the donkeys were grazing nearby, and raiders attacked. They carried them off and killed the servants with the sword. Before that messenger finished speaking, another arrived. Fire of God fell from the sky and burned up the sheep and the servants. Then another. The Chaldeans formed raiding parties, swept down on your camels and carried them off. They put the servants to the sword. And as Job's heart sank deeper with each word, a final messenger came trembling. Your sons and daughters were feasting in the oldest brother's house when suddenly a mighty wind struck the 4 corners of the building. It collapsed on them, and they are dead. In one terrible sequence, Job lost his wealth, his workforce, and most devastating of all, his children. The grief was unbearable. Job tore his robe, shaved his head, and fell to the ground. But he did not curse God. Instead, he uttered words that echo through the centuries. "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." The second assault. But the accuser was not finished. Again he appeared before God, mocking, "Skin for skin, a man will give all he has for his own life. Strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely curse you." Permission was given. Job's body was struck with painful boils, from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. He sat in ashes, scraping his sores with broken pottery. The mighty man of Uz became an object of pity, abandoned and despised. Even his wife, broken by grief, said to him, "Are you still holding on to your integrity? Curse God and die." But Job's reply was unwavering. "Shall we accept good from God, and not trouble?" The silence of heaven. As Job sat in misery, 3 of his friends came to visit: Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. At first, they sat in silence for 7 days, overwhelmed by the sight of his suffering. But eventually, their silence turned into speeches. They accused Job, insisting that his suffering must be punishment for hidden sins. "Surely you have offended God," they reasoned. But Job defended his innocence. He poured out his soul with raw honesty, lamenting his birth and crying out for answers. "Why was I not stillborn? Why is light given to those in misery? Why has God made me his target?" His words were heavy, filled with despair and confusion. Job was not pretending to be strong. He was wrestling with the silence of heaven, and with the mystery of a God who seemed absent, yet whom he still refused to abandon. The human cry. Job's story is not just about one man long ago. It is about every human soul that has cried out in suffering. His voice is the voice of countless people who have asked, "Why do the innocent suffer? Why do the wicked prosper? Why does God remain silent when life falls apart?" In Job, we see our own humanity. He was righteous, yet he suffered. He was faithful, yet he questioned. He loved God, yet he demanded answers. This paradox is what makes his story timeless. The voice of the Almighty. Finally, after long chapters of debate and despair, God spoke. Out of a storm, his voice thundered. "Who is this that darkens my counsel with words without knowledge? Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb?" God did not answer Job's why. Instead, he revealed his majesty. He painted a picture of creation. The stars, the seas, the creatures of the earth. He asked Job if he could command the morning, guide the constellations, or provide food for the wild animals. The message was clear. God's wisdom is vast, his purpose is hidden, his power beyond human grasp. In awe, Job bowed low. He said, "Surely I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes." Restoration. The test was over. Job's integrity had endured. He never cursed God, even when stripped of everything. God restored his fortunes, giving him twice as much as he had before. His brothers, sisters, and friends came to comfort him. He was blessed with new children and lived many more years, full of honor and abundance. But the true victory was not material. Job's greatest treasure was the revelation that God is sovereign, wise, and worthy of trust, even when life makes no sense. Lessons for us today. Job's story is more than ancient history. It is a mirror held up to every generation. His trials raise questions we still ask today. Why do good people suffer? How do we hold on when everything collapses? Can faith survive when heaven seems silent? The lesson of Job is not that we will understand all suffering. The lesson is that faith is not built on blessings, but on trust. Job teaches us that it's possible to grieve, to question, even to cry out in anger, and still remain faithful. His story reminds us that God's silence is not God's absence, that the storms of life do not erase his sovereignty, and that, in the end, his purposes are always greater than our pain. Closing reflection. So let me ask you, when everything else is gone, when wealth fades, when health fails, when friends disappear, and when prayers seem unanswered, will you still trust God? Job's faith tested beyond limits stands as a challenge to us all. To believe, not because of blessings, but because of the unshakable conviction that God is worthy of trust. This is the untold story of Job. Subscribe to the Master's Code for more untold Bible stories, mysteries revealed, and lessons that still speak to us today.